Hello and welcome to Bite My Pie. Almost everyone these days knows that when you buy a mobile device, there's only really two viable options, Android or iOS. Usually to get your hands on one of these, you need to purchase a smartphone or tablet. But in this video we're going to look at installing Android onto your own existing hardware. There's a few reasons why this might be useful. You might have an old abandoned computer lying around that you could put back into active use again with an up-to-date operating system. You might have a Windows tablet that you'd prefer was actually running Android. Or then again, you might just be curious and like to see how this whole process works. In order to do this, we're going to need some software, and here we'll be using the free and open source Android x86. So if this sounds appealing to you, stick around. The Android operating system, which is developed by Google, gets a new release every year. It used to have names based on confectionery, so we had things like gingerbread, lollipop and marshmallow. However, Android 9, or Pie as it was also known, was the last release to follow this versioning theme. The latest official release at the time of this recording is Android 10, although version 11 should be out later this year. The majority of Android devices use an ARM processor. The hardware is typically what's known as an SoC, or system on a chip, due to most of the components, including the CPU, being integrated or embedded into the main circuit board. In contrast, your average PC uses an Intel or AMD processor. This architecture is known as x86. Because of this, Android in its original form would not be able to run on a standard laptop or desktop computer. Luckily for us though, the Android x86 operating system, as the name suggests, has been specifically developed to work on more traditional hardware. So let's dig in and give it a go. First things first, we need to download the Android operating system. Let's start then by opening our web browser and searching for Android x86. And it's this one here that we want, android-x86.org. From the home screen we just need to click this blue download button, and then you just need to select one of these links to download it from, either OSDN or FOSS-Hub. I'm going to go with FOSS-Hub. Here we can see that Android x86 is available in both 32 and 64-bit versions. Unless you've got a very old computer, you're going to want the 64-bit version. And for our purposes here, we're going to want the ISO file, not the RPM file. At the time of this recording, the current version is version 9, release 2. Although Android itself is now on version 10, it obviously takes a little while for the developers of Android x86 to port it across so that it works on more traditional hardware. When you consider there's a significant number of actual Android devices out there that still haven't been upgraded to version 9, it's pretty impressive that this free and open source project has been able to get this release out the door. So let's click on this 64-bit ISO file link to start the download, and I'm going to save that to my downloads directory by clicking save. This process is going to take a little while, so I'll pause the video and come back when it's complete. Great, so that's finished downloading. Now before we close the web browser, let's come back to the address bar, click in there, and we're going to search for Etcher and press enter. And it's this one here, Balena Etcher, that we want to click on. Now we're going to need this software to copy Android x86 onto a USB stick so that we can install it onto our computer. But rather than grabbing the entire program to install, let's click the little drop down arrow here and download the portable version by clicking on that. I'm also going to save that to my downloads directory. Once it's finished downloading, you can close your web browser, and we're going to open File Explorer and browse to the downloads directory. If you've been following along, you should now have two files sitting there waiting: the Bellina Etcher portable program and the Android x86 disk image file. As the Android x86 file is almost a gigabyte in size, I'd recommend that you use at least a 2 gigabyte or larger USB stick. So if you plug that into your computer now and then double click on the Bellina Etcher portable program to launch it. Okay, we can see it's automatically detected the USB stick. I've got a Kingston Data Traveller 64 gigabyte model plugged in. Next, you need to hover over Flash from File and click the blue button that appears. And if we navigate to our downloads directory and select the Android x86 file and click open, then all that's left to do is click Flash. I was forgetting Microsoft's pop-up, so just click yes to allow the program to run. Etcher will now start copying Android x86 onto our USB stick, so I'll pause the video and come back when the process is complete. Splendid, the flash is complete. So we can close Etcher, close our File Explorer window, and remove the USB stick from the computer, unless this is the computer that you're planning to install Android onto, obviously. Just before we start the installation, let's have a quick word about the type of hardware you're going to install it onto. At its heart, Android is a mobile operating system designed primarily for smartphones and tablets. While, as you'll see shortly, it will work quite happily using a keyboard and mouse. To really get the best out of it, you're going to want to install it on a device that has a touch screen. That way you'll be able to make the most of all of the gestures that are available to work through touch. So with that said, let's start the installation. You should have your USB stick with Android x86 on it connected to the computer you want to install it onto. Then you need to power your computer on and keep tapping the relevant key to enter the boot menu. On my laptop that's the F12 key, but this will vary depending on the make and model of your machine. It should appear briefly on the screen as the computer boots, but if you're not sure what it is, you could always do a Google search to find out. Unfortunately, not all PCs have a boot menu, in which case you'll need to go into the BIOS or UEFI to set the boot order there. From within the boot menu, we need to use the cursor keys to navigate to the USB stick entry. Mine is the Kingston Data Traveller. Android x86 supports booting from UEFI, so if your USB stick is listed more than once, as it is here, select the entry with EFI or UEFI in the title, and then press enter on your keyboard to continue. This menu gives us the option to try Android x86 without installing it. In fact, if you don't do anything, that's precisely what will happen once the countdown times out and it runs the Android x86 live option. It's a good idea to do this first to make sure that the operating system is compatible with your hardware and everything works as expected. But to save time, we'll go straight to the installation. So use the cursor key on your keyboard to go down. Now you could use this option here, Android x86 installation. But I've found that using this method, sometimes the operating system refuses to boot after the install has completed. So what I'd recommend, and certainly the option I've had more success with, is to come down to Advanced Options and press Enter. And then from here select the Android x86 auto install to specified hard disk option and press enter. On this screen we need to select the hard disk onto which we'd like to install Android x86. So make sure you select the right one for your computer. For me that's SDA hard disk, which is this 500 GB SSD drive. And when you've selected yours you can press enter to continue. As it tells us now, we've chosen the auto installation, and so the installer is going to wipe the whole of that drive and install Android x86 onto it. Obviously make sure you've backed up anything you want to keep off that drive, because this process will completely erase it. And when you're happy to continue, either press the left cursor key or the tab key on the keyboard to come across to yes, and then press enter to confirm that you want to continue. So it's going to format the drive for us, ready to install Android x86. And now it's going to install the operating system onto our internal drive. And that's it. Android x86, as it tells us, is installed successfully. I recommend at this point selecting the reboot option and then press enter on your keyboard. Don't forget to remove the USB stick from the computer before it reboots, because this time, having installed Android x86, we want it to boot from the internal drive. Congratulations! If you're seeing this screen on your own computer, you've now successfully installed the operating system. From here it's a standard Android setup. Unfortunately the laptop that I'm using doesn't have a touch screen, so I'll be using the keyboard and a mouse. When I move the mouse you can see that a cursor appears on the screen. So while Android works best on touchscreen devices, it will also operate on more traditional hardware. First things first then, let's choose our language. So if you don't want English United States, click the drop down list here. I'm going to scroll down to English and select that, and then for me I want the United Kingdom. And then when you're happy with your selection, either tap or click on start. Next you need to connect to your Wi-Fi network, so I'm going to select Byte My Pi. Then you need to enter your wireless key in here, and with that done you can connect. We now have the option to copy apps and data that's associated with our Google account across onto this device. If you'd like to do that, select the next button to choose what you want to transfer. Alternatively, what I'm going to do here is choose Don't Copy. Right, next up we need to sign into our Google account. So enter either the email address or phone number that's associated with your account in here. And then, depending on whether you're using a touchscreen or mouse, either tap or click on next. Pop in your password and select next again. Then we need to agree to Google's terms of service here. Then you can adjust the date and time if necessary, and select next to continue. Decide which of the Google services in this list you want to allow or use. You may well want to back up your data to Google Drive. I'm going to turn that off. You may also want to use location services, particularly if you plan on utilising apps such as Google Maps. Again, I'm going to turn that one off. It's up to you if you want to send usage and diagnostic data to Google. I'm going to turn that one off as well. And then you need to accept the options you've selected. For security, it's advisable to activate the lock screen. I'm going to create a PIN number to unlock it. As it tells us, this needs to be at least 4 digits, and then either press enter or tap next to pop it in again, and when you're done just confirm it. Here, by selecting continue, you have the option to personalize the Google experience to help with things like weather forecasts and your appointments, or alternatively you can just say no thanks. And then we have the option to set up a few more things, or as it tells us here, you could do this in settings later if you wanted to anyway. So I'm going to choose no thanks. Okay, the setup is almost complete. This last selection is actually quite an important one. You need to choose which of these two apps, or launchers as they're sometimes known, opens when you tap or click on the home button here. We'll look at each of them in a moment, but basically I'd suggest if you're running Android x86 with a touch screen, you're probably better off going with the quick step option, as the appearance is more like the Android you're used to. But if you're running Android x86 on a more traditional computer, say a desktop PC, you're probably better off with the taskbar option, because as the name suggests, this gives us a more conventional layout with a taskbar along the bottom. If you're not sure right now which one would be better for you, that's okay, just follow along and you'll see how we can switch between the two. So let's first go with Quick Step and select that. And because we're only trying it out at this stage, select just once. This screen should be fairly familiar to anyone that's ever used Android before. If we select the cog at the top left, we can then complete the configuration by choosing Finish Setup and then selecting Start. It then offers to bring in any data that we may have backed up to the cloud. I don't want to do this, so I'll select Don't Copy. Here we're given the chance again for Google to personalise the experience for us. I still don't want to do that, so I'm going to click No Thanks. And then we also get another opportunity to set up any of these things listed on the screen, which again I'm going to say no thanks. Great, so the setup configuration is now all complete. Since this video is about getting up and running with Android x86 on your own device, I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs of how to use the operating system itself. Instead, we'll focus more on getting the most out of Android when it's installed on existing hardware. If you're using a physical keyboard like me, and particularly if you selected English UK during the installation, you may find that the keyboard is still defaulting to an American layout. To correct this, if we come up to the little A icon, the Android system icon at the top, and then select Configure Physical Keyboard, and then click on the Physical Keyboard option here and choose Setup Keyboard Layout. And now we can scroll down the list to select the correct option, which for me is English UK, and that should now work correctly. Right, now if we come down to the bottom and click the square icon, which shows us an overview of any apps that we've opened. If you want to close an app from here and you're using a keyboard and mouse, simply hold down the left click button over the app, then push it up and let go. Alternatively, if we were to open a few apps, so let's do that now. We'll just do 3. There we go. And you wanted to close them all, if you come back to the square button again, the overview, and use the scroll wheel on your mouse to move them across until you can see clear all, and click on that. If you're using a keyboard and mouse and want to view all the apps that you've got installed, you can hold down the left click on the mouse whilst pushing up, which will reveal them. Similarly, to hide them away, you can hold down the left click again and this time pull down. To turn off your device, if you press the physical power button on it, this power menu should then appear and you can select the relevant option. Right, now if you recall, we're currently using the Quick Step launcher, which, as I said, works best on touchscreen devices because the layout is very much standard Android. So if we select the home button again, but this time choose the taskbar launcher, you can see we've now got this much more traditional layout, complete with a taskbar along the bottom. Note we have still got the back, home and overview buttons at the very bottom of the screen, but we've now got this menu on the bottom left, which if we click it is very similar to a Windows Start menu. Since all of the apps show up in this menu, there's no need for the kind of pull-up application drawer that we get in the Quick Step launcher. It's worth noting on this menu the 3 vertical dots at the bottom right. If we click those, you get this new menu, and among other things, this is where the power menu resides. So this is where you would come to turn off the computer. If you're using a mouse, just as you could swipe down with your finger from the top of the screen, you can click and drag down from the top to reveal the notifications panel. In common with a more traditional desktop computer layout, if we were to open an app, you'll notice it opens in its own little window. We can click and drag it around the screen. You could resize the window by clicking in the corner and dragging if you wanted to. More usefully, at the top right you've got these little icons that allow you to minimize, maximize or close the window. Having the apps open in this more traditional windowed mode allows us far greater flexibility as to what we can do with them. To demonstrate this, if we click on the app menu, and instead of left clicking on an app, if we right click on one, you'll see this context menu, and if we now click New Window, you can now choose exactly how you want the app window to appear. So you could go maximize to take up the entire screen, or more interestingly, if we choose half screen left and click that one, and then if we go back to the app menu and choose a second app, so let's right click on Notes and select New Window, and this time if we choose half screen right, you can now see we've got 2 apps open side by side, which, running Android x86 on your own hardware, particularly if you've got a reasonably large monitor, this could be a very useful feature. Okay, let's close those apps. Hopefully, even with just that short little demonstration, you can start to see just how useful the taskbar launcher can be when using Android x86 on more conventional hardware, especially if you're using a keyboard and mouse. At the moment, each time we select the home button, it asks us which app we want to use as the launcher, so either taskbar or Quick Step. Once you've decided which of these best suits your use case, rather than selecting just once, go for always instead. So as I'm using this on a laptop with no touchscreen, I'm going to stick with taskbar and select that option now. And if we click on the home button again, it will no longer ask us which launcher we want to use because it's defaulting to taskbar. I'll just quickly show you here in the settings app where that option is located in case you ever did want to change it again. So if you come to apps and notifications and then scroll down to default apps, we've got the home app set as taskbar, but if you select that, you can change it here. And then the last thing I'd like to mention about this user interface is the widgets icon on the taskbar. In here you can create a screen full of your favourite widgets. So let's add a couple now. If you hover over one of the squares, let's start at the top left and then select that, we can now choose a widget for one of the installed apps. So let's go with calendar first. Let's add a second widget to the side of that one. This time I'm going to go with Chrome search. If we now come back to the taskbar and select the widgets icon, it hides them away, and if we come back and select it again, there they are. Obviously selecting a particular widget would launch that app. If you later want to remove one of these widgets, if you're using a touch screen, you can press down on it and let go to get this remove widget pop up. I'm going to cancel out of that. Or alternatively, if you're using a keyboard and mouse, you can right click on a widget with your mouse to get the same dialog box. And that about does it. Let's power down our newly created Android x86 device. Hopefully everything goes nice and smoothly for you when using Android x86, but unfortunately we all know what computers can be like sometimes. So before we finish, I'd just like to cover a couple of things that might help if you run into problems. Once you've installed Android x86, if when you reboot it takes you to this command prompt rather than the usual Android start screen, this normally means that there's a problem with the graphics driver, and if that's the case, I'll now guide you through the steps of telling it the correct driver to use to fix this issue. So we need to start by typing in the word reboot and pressing enter. When you get to this screen, use the downwards cursor key to select the second option here, the debug mode, and then you can press enter. If it sticks like it has done here, just press the enter key to get to a command prompt, and then type clear and press enter to clear the screen. Okay, now we need to type the command mount space dash o space remount comma rw space /mnt and press enter. Then we need to type cd space /mnt /grub and press enter again. Next we're going to edit the menu file in the grub directory using the vi text editor. So to do this, type vi space menu dot lst and press enter. You need to press I on the keyboard to enter the text insert mode. You can see in this menu file that we've got multiple Android x86 entries. We're not concerned here with any of the debug options. What we do want to do is use the cursor keys to navigate down to this first entry to the kernel line and get to the end of that, and we're going to add the following instructions. So if you first press space, and then we're going to type VGA equals 834 space no mode set space X force Visa. That's going to tell Android x86 to use the Visa driver when it boots. We now need to save those changes, so press the escape key to exit the text insert mode, and then type :WQ and press enter to save and exit the file. Great, we're almost there. You now want to type cd space / and press enter, and then u mount space / mnt and press enter again. Don't worry if you get this message that it can't unmount, because we're going to do a restart anyway. So we do that with reboot space -f and press enter. And all being well, fingers and toes well and truly crossed, Android now boots correctly. The other issue I wanted to mention is that if for any reason you're having problems powering down Android, rather than forcibly turning it off, you can use the command line to do so. So if we look at the installed apps and launch the terminal emulator, first let's give it access to the files on our device. And the command we need to type in to turn the device off is the reboot command, but we need to put a space and a dash and a P to power off rather than reboot, and then press enter. If you're using Android x86 with a physical keyboard, rather than open the terminal emulator, if you hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and tap F1, we're now in a console window, and you could enter the same command here, reboot space dash P, to power down the system. If I don't want to do that and I just want to return to the GUI, I can hold down the Alt key again and this time tap F7. And that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find new and interesting ways to put Android x86 to work for you on your own existing hardware. And I also hope that with the information we've covered throughout the course of this video, you now feel more confident to do just that. Don't forget that however you decide to use it, the most important thing is to remember to have fun. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if you'd like to be notified when I post the next one, just click the bell icon. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.